Hello from me, Roshni Gajjar, and thank you for joining me on episode 13 of Lift as We Rise. In 2018, CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, said, to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. He went on to say companies must benefit all of their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. Business for good, purpose-driven business, these terms have become part of the business language and is the basis for our conversations here on Lift as We Rise. But to what extent is this corporate talk being converted into intentional action, particularly in emerging markets such as Africa? I'm speaking today to Tiekie Barnard, founder and CEO of Shared Value Africa Initiative. She's also the founder and CEO of Shift Impact Africa. Tiekie's absolutely passionate about the subject. So Tiekie, I'm really glad to be speaking with you today.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners, Roshni. Thank you very much for this invitation and really look forward to our discussion today. And I think it is important because we've seen what COVID, has done to business, and not only to business, to society as well. So yeah, I really look forward to this discussion and sharing, some of our projects and what we're doing, because I am, as you just said, very passionate about this subject, because business has an enormous role to play in bringing about change.
Yeah, Tiekie, just to bring the listeners into our confidence, it was a conversation about business, shared value, and sustainable development goals that connected us earlier this month. And, that conversation was so exciting and energizing. I thought that it would be good to spill it over into this podcast. So I hope to you listening in today that you find some strategic value in this conversation. Tiekie, let's get straight into it. You're on a quest to build Africa's most impactful shared value business network. What is your game plan, Tiekie, and how are you going about doing it through your businesses?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So just for your listeners, the Shared Value Africa Initiative, as Roshni just said now, we're a shared value organization that advocate for the adoption of the shared value model on the Africa continent. So a little bit of a step back. So we were born on Africa Day, May the 25th. We're a Pan-Africa organization. Next week, Tuesday, Roshni will be 3 years old. We've been very blessed to have created a footprint in 11 countries. We work on a membership model, and our focus is first and foremost on the private sector. So how do we build Africa's most impactful business network? What we do is that we engage with the private sector, and we advocate for the adoption of the shared value business management model, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, to what we call is profit with purpose. It is about doing good while doing good business. Our job is to shift leadership and business mindsets to recognize that we have a responsibility to our people and the planet, and that we, as business, we should use our businesses to do good while making money. It's not an easy job. I can say that right out, Roshni, because going into different countries, and convincing leadership, that we need to look at the way that we're doing business and how we're affecting our societies and our environment. It's really not an easy job, but it's nevertheless something that I'm really passionate about, and it really keeps me going and energizes me every single day.
So Tiekie, you've got Shared Value Africa Initiative and you've got Shift Impact. Are they separate businesses or do they work together, complementing each other?
Thank you for that, because I often forget about the one and then talk about the other one. So they're two businesses that complement each other. So the Shared Value Africa Initiative is a non-profit organization. It's a membership organization, and our biggest mandate is the advocacy side of the shared value business management concept, because it's a fairly new concept. It's 10 years old this year. So we have to ensure that our business leaders, our businesses, our governments, our NGOs, even our civil society members, everybody, we've got to create that awareness within those organizations. And then the Shift Impact Africa is the consulting arm. So often what happens is that an organization wants to start their shared value journey, but they're not 100% sure how to do it. How do I start my journey? Maybe I'm already creating shared value at this stage, but I just want to make sure that I am. So Shift is the consulting arm that helps organizations to start their shared value journey, or possibly to look at what they're doing from a shared value perspective and see if there are any gaps.
Tiekie, so congratulations on your upcoming anniversary. Let's call it that. It's probably quite a proud week coming up for you. And it seems here on Lift as we Rise, we seem to be picking the dates perfectly this May. Last week, we had a representative from Amazon, and we had that conversation on Amazon's listing anniversary. You're celebrating your anniversary this coming week. And one of the architects of the shared value concept, Professor Michael Porter from the Harvard Business School, he actually celebrates his birthday this weekend. So obviously a very synchronistic conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tiekie, as you explained, shared value is about doing business differently. And in Professor Michael Porter's view, doing it differently in a way that contributes beneficially to society. Shared value was, of course, developed together with Professor Mark Kramer, who's a leading researcher, writer, speaker, and consultant for social impact, right? What I find is, I've been on the sustainability program, sustainability strategy since about 2008, 2009. And although the vocabulary in our corporate world has evolved and the awareness has certainly grown, we've yet to see intentional action that does contribute to a longer term vision. However, 2020 did shift that for us. So explain to us what shared value means for those who are hearing it for the first time.
Thank you for that. Very happy to do that. So yeah, I think 2020 is possibly a year that some of us, want to forget about. I don't know about you, Roshni, but that's, it was a very tough year. But let me talk about shared value. So shared value is not corporate social investment. Shared value is also not philanthropy. It's not corporate social responsibility. Because corporate social responsibility is all about a company's regulatory responsibility. You have to be sustainable as an organization. You've got to pay your salaries. You've got to pay your suppliers, you've got to pay your taxes, and you've got to service your customers. So that is your corporate responsibility as an organization. On corporate social investment, there is no return on investment there. That's what we as an organization, we give to a cause, and we support these different causes. So shared value works with all of those different disciplines, with CSI, with philanthropy, and with corporate social responsibility. Shared value is an umbrella business management concept, and its disciplines and principles includes sustainability, innovation, responsible business, social impact, environmental impact, that big word called inclusion, accessibility, ecosystems, and most of all, it is about working together. I think the puristic definition from Michael Porter and Mark Kramer is that shared value is policies and practices. That's what we do as businesses that enhances the competitiveness of our company while simultaneously enhancing the economic conditions in the communities in which we operate. It is first and foremost about collaboration, Roshni, because I think the old way of thinking that we have to create our own competitive edge and we can't work with that organization because they are competitive, competitor, those days are over, because we have to collaborate. That is collaboration is the key to sustainability and shared value. And the shared value business management model is also a tool to align your business to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I wanted to just give you some examples of shared value to the listeners, just to try and show them, when you talk shared value, which organizations. So we know that business, as Roshni also said in the beginning, business and society is inextricably linked. The one cannot prosper without the other. And as a shared value business, you identify that social issue that's holding your business back, or that issue that you believe can create a profitable business, and you create a profitable business around it. Because shared value is first and foremost about profit. It is about coming up with profitable innovations that will bring about change in society. So for instance, I want to give you this example from the developed world, our local example, Discovery. They incentivize people like us to exercise, keep ourselves healthy, drive better, so now we're healthier, we have less accidents, and Discovery saves an enormous amount on their bottom line, because they don't have to pay out for those accidents. We don't go to the doctor that often because we're a lot healthier. And that's why, their model is very simple, but it's such an effective model. And they are one of the most successful insurance companies in the world, actually, today, because Professor Michael Porter always used them, as Harvard, as he's still an example of shared value. So when we look more at the developing world and we look into the rest of Africa, where we still have 600 million people that do not have access to electricity, there's a really, really great example called Mkopa. So if any one of you want to go and look at them, it's M-KOPA. So they were the first ever pay-as-you-go solar panel renewable energy system. So how they started off 8 years ago, actually, you could buy the initial package, which consisted of a solar panel. It had 3 LED lights, a cell phone charger, and a radio. And then what you did is you paid it off at $1 a month, and after a year, the system, became yours. So they now they were the first pay-as-you-go. So they were a leader from an innovation perspective in that field. And they're working now, I think at the moment, in about 4 or 5 countries in Africa. And what they've done is, because they've got, I think, more than 1 million families now on Mkopa, they also now, making these cell phones. They're developing cell phones that can be charged on these solar panels. They're developing televisions. So they've extended their products that they deliver to their clients as well. So yes, shared value is first and foremost about profit with purpose. So we have to make a profit as an organization, but it is how do we actually make those profits? How do we affect society? How do we affect our environment? And most of all, how do we affect the people? Thanks.
Tiekie, this is such an intricate concept, shared value. We, like I said earlier, we talk about it, but to put it into action is something else. It requires leadership commitment, and most importantly, long-term thinking and a commitment to a long-term purpose. Now, if we think about these innovative strategies, kind of game-changing, purpose-driven leadership, often it starts with a problem that you are compelled to solve to sustain your own business or your income stream or a society. So looking at problems in a different way is not a bad way to say, what do we have impacting our business at the moment? And how can we address and respond to the issue in such a way that not only tackles the issue for the next year till our next strategy workshop, but does so in a way that changes the narrative of how we do our business. Would that be a fair assessment of shared value as a concept?
I think the first thing that you said is something that I left out, so thank you for that. Shared value, and first and foremost, is a long-term commitment that you make as an organization. So when you think about shared value, as you just said, Roshni, is that it is an absolute long-term commitment. You identify that issue or that's holding your business back. I mean, Mark Kramer always calls it that. He said, what is holding your business back? And to give you an idea, I mean, I'm thinking about this project in Tanzania with Yara, who's the fertilizer company. You know, they talk about collective impact. They got 65 organizations together to build the agricultural sector in Tanzania. So what they had enormous problems, you know, like roads that they had to lay on. They had problems in the harbors. They had so many different problems, but they actually tackled it as a collective. And yes, we've got to shift our thinking from a business perspective. Exactly what you said. The thinking have to change, because whatever we were doing before COVID didn't work. And COVID actually just demonstrated it even further to us, you know, that we have to find new systems. We've got to do things in different ways. We've got to think differently as leadership, as management, and even as, you know, somebody that just wants to start a business, or if I'm working for a business. It is about, we've got to shift our thinking, because we cannot, you know, I think the UN Sustainable Development Goals, their sort of purpose line is leave no one behind, you know, and I think that the inequality gap is just getting bigger. So we have a responsibility to try and reduce that inequality gap.
Tiekie, you referred to the Discovery example, and to those listeners who haven't come across the South African healthcare insurance company, Discovery, it would be interesting to go and have a look at them, and their business philosophy centered around shared value. And the innovation there was to really bring members into a way of living and lifestyle that really unlocks wellness in healthcare, in sports and fitness, in healthy eating, and in choices that they make from a consumer side. So, you know, as a South African, it always makes us quite proud to hear that our corporate case studies are the flagship case studies around shared value principles at an esteemed academic institution such as Harvard. So Tiekie, you know, yours is an SME or NGO organization, and the types of challenges that we're trying to tackle are huge. And corporates have been grappling with this in terms of how best to do it, because of course, as a business, return on investment is a real requirement. And the longer that return on investment takes to materialize, the more difficult those decisions become now, so that you can generate those ROIs into the future. And you know, Tiekie, this is where our conversation was actually initiated, is that StratAstute Consulting's NGO is focused on business to business SDG projects for scale and impact. And in the conversations we've had with potential companies, I can hear that they're all very intrigued, very much on the same page in terms of, yes, this needs to be done and there's a need to change the narrative. But when it comes to signing up, to investing, to bringing projects to the table, everyone's folding their arms and waiting for someone else to be the first adopter. So from your perspective, from the work you've done at Shared Value Africa Initiative, share with us the types of projects and programs that you've run across Africa, and also what you did to build trust from your stakeholders and from the corporates that you work with.
Yeah, I think, Roshni, what you mentioned is a really difficult one, because I'm sure, you know, it happens to all of us, is that we just don't see people moving forward, or the intention is there, but nothing is happening. So, you know, for us, thankfully, in certain cases, but not in all cases, is that policy and regulations sometimes stipulate that organizations need to look at climate change. You know, those are things that they need to address. Specifically, if you're listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, you've got to look at your, you know, align to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and you need to report on that. So there are certain policies and regulations that helps us, I'm saying from a Shared Value Africa initiative, to sometimes to push the agenda, you know, in order to get organizations to make a decision. But it's not always easy. But just to go a little bit further on the projects that we're working on across Africa. So we've just, at the end of March, we've launched the Shared Value Africa Academy. And what we're doing at the Shared Value Africa Academy, it's an online academy, and we train in the concept of creating shared value. So our focus is on our young entrepreneurs, because as we know, we're the youngest continent. We also have the youngest population. We've also have the highest unemployment rate for our young people. So what we're doing from a Shared Value Africa initiative, we train our young entrepreneurs, you know, in the disciplines and principles of the shared value business management concept. And we've just finished, I think we shared it with you when we chatted the first time, Roshni. We've just finished with our first cohort, and they came from across Africa, these young businesses. We're now about to start our second cohort in July, which will be women only in the agricultural sector, which we're really looking forward to. And then we also, and I think all of your listeners on this call today would really listen, you know, would agree with us, is that gender-based violence is our second pandemic. I mean, our president has said it, and that's why he started the private sector gender-based violence fund on the 4th of June, that we were very privileged to be involved in. So the Shared Value Africa initiative started in August last year, or not August, actually in June, before Women's Month in August. We started the It's Not Okay movement, because we got together as a team and we said that gender-based violence, it's not okay. And the private sector actually needs to help to reduce, you know, the inequality that there is at the moment, because the inequality in the pay gaps that we have from a business perspective, the inequality at management level with the number of men in management roles and women in management roles, you know, it is very prevalent, and there's so much research about that. So we started the It's Not Okay movement. We work very closely. One of our biggest projects, research projects ever, is with the University of Johannesburg at the moment. We're focusing on doing research within the private sector across 5 different topics, you know, on gender-based violence support in the workplace, gender equality in the workplace, you know, what is our leadership, you know, what is their knowledge base about gender-based violence? Do they understand that gender-based violence is not only a societal issue, it is also a business issue. So we lose so much money. I think this report, and this is another report that we're also working on with UJ, that we're going to update. The KPMG report from, I think it was as far back as 2014, said it cost the South African, you know, the South African economy between 24 and 48 billion rand a year, gender-based violence. But, you know, now the estimations are far higher than that because of COVID. So that's a very big project that we're currently working on. Then we're also working on the Africa Entrepreneurship Forum. It's a platform that we've created for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. It's also, again, it's Pan-African. So we've just had one on the 13th of May with, and it's really with young entrepreneurs that talk about the challenges that they face. You know, how can we support each other? How can we get ourselves investor ready? Because that's another thing with young entrepreneurs, is always about the funding side of it in order to be sustainable and take your business to the next level. Then we're also working on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And for those of your listeners that are not 100% familiar with it, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a flagship project of the African Union. It was established in 2018, and what we're doing is we're creating a single market for goods and services, facilitated by the movement of our people to promote industrial development and sustainability across, Africa, and to cross borders and trade with each other. Because I think I want to quickly tell you a story, is that somebody from Nigeria told me the other day that it was easier for her to get a visa to go to America than what it is for her to get a visa to come to South Africa. So we need to make those things easier so that we can do this cross-border trades. And I think as of the 5th of February this year, 54 member states of the AU signed this agreement, and 36 countries have deposited their instruments, of ratification. And it started training already on the 1st of January and this year. So this agreement connects the people of Africa, 1.3 billion people across the continent, with a combined GDP, I think, of about 3.4 trillion. And according to the AFCFTA Secretariat, if we work together on this as a collective, we can lift 100 million people out of poverty. So we're working again with the University of Johannesburg to create an app, an information sharing app that will be available towards the end of this year for our entrepreneurs. And and lastly, we've got so many projects. I won't mention them all. I'm just mentioning these which could be of interest to your listeners. The last one I want to mention is our flagship event, which is the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit that takes place in November this year. And what we do on an annual basis, we convene leaders from the shared value community and interested parties to talk about shared value, challenges, success stories, and the importance of working together. And our theme for this year is One Africa, One Voice.
Tiekie, the work you are doing sounds exceptionally powerful, and most certainly if these projects can continue in the next 5-10 years, you will be changing the narrative in the spaces you're working in. So I'm particularly keen to understand, how is a project initiated? How is it funded? And then where does Shared Value Africa Initiative or SHIFT help mobilize these projects? So for those corporate leaders or corporate representatives out there, or even NGOs and SMEs, if they'd like to work with your organization, what's the starting point?
So just as I explained earlier on, so the Shared Value Africa Initiative is the nonprofit, and that works on a membership basis. So we have, and I'll give you some example of some of our members. So APSA is a member, Enel Green Power is a member. I know they work quite a lot in the Eastern Cape. We've got Discovery is a member. I'm going to be terrible because I'm not going to remember all of them, but they're on our website, www.svai.africa. But we've got large organizations that work in South Africa, Old Mutual as well, across Africa as well. So that's our membership base. So where does their money go when they, from a membership perspective, what we do is we create these engagement platforms where we use these thought leaders from these organizations to try and convince their peers and to try and explain to people what the shared value concept is about. Because again, our purpose is to build the most impactful shared value business network on Africa, because we believe very, very strongly that if we can get every single business on the Africa continent to practice shared value, we will really see the economic growth and the shift from a societal and an economic perspective. So what we do from a Shared Value Africa Initiative as a nonprofit we try and work with other non-profits, to see how we can get the shared value concept out there. I'll give you an example. We're working with a non-profit called A1, which is the Africa Women Agricultural Network. They work across 43 companies. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to educate women on supplying financial literacy for women in agriculture. So happy to work, with NGOs where we can. So, and then from a shift impact perspective, is that what we do on a shift, that's the consulting, the consulting arm. So we work with organizations that come to us to say, listen, we want to change our strategy, because that's a big thing as well. And I think you alluded to that, Roshni, is that shifting your strategy as an organization is very scary, and it's a big, big ask. So what we sometimes do, depending on the request and the need from an organization, we sometimes suggest that you start with a shared value project rather than shifting your entire strategy, so that you can get proof of concept and then convince your management to take it into the rest of the organization. So if you want to, we've got both we live on the .africa domain. So our website is www.svai.africa and shiftimpact.africa. We also have a YouTube channel just to show you the conversations that we have, which is the Shared Value Africa Initiative YouTube channel. You can just search for that. So yeah, that's what we do. We still have an enormous amount of work ahead of us, because there are 55 countries in Africa, and I still have to learn to speak French, so which is quite a big demand. But I think that we've seen, Roshni, working with organizations like yourself, we do, we want to create this network, and I think the more we connect with each other, and the more we can create this collective impact.
Tiekie, the bigger the vision and the more challenging the purpose, the more daunting that journey becomes. In fact, to dip your toes into the water is probably the hardest step, right? And we're talking about this between ourselves, based in South Africa. But in his 2021 letter to shareholders, Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, said, despite the darkness of the past 12 months, there have been signs of hope, including companies that have worked to serve their stakeholders with courage and conviction. He says, we saw businesses rapidly innovate to keep food and goods flowing during lockdowns. Companies have stepped up to support nonprofits serving those in need. That is really positive as we now go into this new normal and set our sights on a different and better future in 2030. So, I've always been an advocate of emerging markets as an investment case, and particularly the African continent as an investment case. Share with us from your perspective, Tiekie, how is shared value critical to the future of Africa as a continent and as a foreign direct investment attractor?
I think when we look at the Africa continent, as I mentioned earlier on, we have the youngest population. So what we're finding in Africa, and that's why one of our key focus areas is young entrepreneurs, is that we have our social entrepreneurs. So they already there. They identify these challenges within their communities, and then they come up with ideas to solve those issues within their communities. And what is critical for us as the private sector and business on the Africa continent, we have to support these entrepreneurs, because they are the future of the Africa continent. And what we're doing, and I might have shared it with you in our last meeting as well, is that the impact investors are looking for these entrepreneurship pipelines of businesses. So for us as a Shared Value Africa initiative, we're very, very privileged, and blessed to be involved in these periods of selection when impact investors are looking at businesses, at young businesses, to see if this is a business that can scale or that want to scale, to try and increase their social or environmental impact. So I think for me, if I sitting here today and having this big, huge vision, I think that the Africa continent, the future of the Africa continent lies in the palm of our young people. And in order to get there and to create the economic value that they can, we, as the private sector, and I almost want to say with the greatest of respect, as the older generation, have to be there to support the young ones, to create that economic value and to reduce that inequality gap between the rich and poor. Climate change, gender-based violence, gender equality, corruption, power struggle, conflicts. We see all of that every single day across Africa. But we can, make a difference. We can actually, as the private sector, influence. We are, because the private sector has the resources and the capabilities to influence, so that we can together influence those that have not really looked at what their social impact and their environmental impact is, or how we're supporting our entrepreneurs out there. So there's huge scope, I almost want to call it, for the private sector to step up to the plate, and to work with organizations like yours and like ours to say, this is what we want to do. Let's together as a collective do it so that we can create a much bigger impact.
Tiekie, I almost believe that our youth have an advantage in that they get shared value, they get purpose-driven lives, they get collaboration. And interestingly, the way technology is evolving, and that is their way of living, they are growing up as this being an ubiquitous way of day-to-day life, which is different to the kind of third industrial revolution type of systems that still drive businesses in our society today. And what business or the private sector brings to the table is the decision-making power, of course, the capital, but most importantly, the agility and the ability to convert plans into actions quite well. And of course, for the youth now, where things are at the moment, it must be hell of a daunting to think about your life when jobs are scarce, when jobs are changing so quickly, when corporations are busy adapting or closing down, etc. So now is possibly the time for some co-creation models. And I'm an advocate, Tiekie, and you probably are too, to bring the youth into those solution think tanks, because only then can you create vested interest for long-term outcomes that you and I might not be around to implement fully, but they then will be in the reins to take and sustain that leadership journey. So, these types of projects, Tiekie, what strikes me most is they're too big for any one person or one organization to drive. And therefore, the power of collaboration, which you pointed out earlier, is super critical. And what I find in the work we do, and I'm sure you find the same, is that we talk about collaboration, but to activate collaboration, given the rules and regulations of how business work, is a new way of doing things. And that too will require some time to find its feet, but we've got to start somewhere.
You're 100% right. I just want to say, it's like we've got what you said, your last sentence about we've got to start somewhere. I think somebody posed the question to me one day, is to say, you're talking about the Shared Value Africa initiative, and you're talking about private sector, and you're talking about entrepreneurs and civil society, and where's government in all of this? And I just said to I said to the person that I was talking to, we've reached out to government, but we can't wait. We can't wait. We've got to get going, and we've got to actually, as a collective, we've got to start focusing on how we can, empower each other. How can we work together as a collective to bring about, change? Because, I think it was, if I remember correctly, the Oxfam report of 2021, which they revealed at the World Economic Forum on the 25th of January, reported that the 1,000 richest people on the planet they've already recouped their losses, within 9 months. But it's going to take the other people on the continent. It's going to, not just the continent, but globally, it's going to take decades, for the world's poorest to recover from this economic impact of the pandemic. So there is no better time than now to actually make that shift to creating shared value as an organization, because you can do it. There needs to be a willingness. And yes, it's difficult, but you know what? Sometimes we have to climb the mountains to get to the top.
Yeah, so Tiekie, I think things are starting to get there. So perhaps the time has come, and I remain really positive about that. You spoke about inclusivity earlier, and that's really what this conversation is about today. You have an event coming up at the end of the year, and it takes leadership from the private sector, from NGOs, from SMEs, and even from government to give this objective due gravitas. Tell us a bit more about that event and how people can get involved, because I think that is important.
So, thank you for highlighting this. I really appreciate it. So we, when we started with the Shared Value Africa initiative, we realized 3 years ago, even a little bit longer, because we started working in the background before we launched it, that there was an enormous, information. There was a gap because people didn't understand the concept. People didn't know about it on our continent. So we then, started the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit, which we host annually. This year, the concept of shared value that was created by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer is 10 years old. So what we did is we've been in Kenya with our summit, we've been in South Africa, we've delivered it virtually. So this year it's a 2-day summit. It takes place on the 8th and the 9th of November. It will take place in Johannesburg, God willing. We have to look at what happens with COVID, but it is also going to be broadcast as well. So if we have to reduce our attendance numbers, we will, in order to adhere to policies and regulations, but it will be broadcast live. What we're doing this year with the summit is that we, as I said to you earlier, our team is One Africa, One Voice. We are definitely going to discuss the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where we are after a year looking back. Have we increased the intra-Africa trade, between the different countries? We are definitely talking to entrepreneurs, because it's about, how do we include our entrepreneurs from a private sector perspective, in everything that we do in our supply chain? How do we bring them into our supply chain? So we are also going to talk about gender equality in the workplace, because that is a definite game changer from a business perspective. So, and we've already confirmed, we've got Sanda Ojiambu from the United Nations Global Compact is one of our speakers. And then we've got also from Enel Green Power in Italy, we've got Maria Cristina Papetti. She's head of the global sustainability of the second biggest utility company in the world. So yeah, I think if you want to learn about what shared value is about, if you just want to come and listen to what some organizations are doing from an innovation perspective, if you want to come and hear how leaders have tackled, moving their organizations, into the shared value, to becoming shared value practitioners. Join us on the 8th and the 9th. We're probably going to start creating awareness. Our media schedule starts, I think, at the beginning of July. And please join us. It's for free. We don't charge a fee. We just want you to become part of our community, and come and see what happens from a shared value perspective. Our Africa Shared Value Leadership website is not 100% live. It is live at the moment, but we haven't put the program and everything on there because we're still working on it. But would love to have all your listeners, tune in on the 8th and the 9th, or even come to Johannesburg if you feel like it, to attend to the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit.
Okay, so you heard Tiekie's call to action. Please share this podcast with those who you think may be interested, especially business leaders, leaders in your society, leaders in government, because without collective thinking and future thinking, we can't actually change the game in Africa and beyond. So Michael Porter puts it very nicely. He says, change brings opportunities. On the other hand, change can be confusing. So no doubt it requires courage. And at the end of the day, it's all about not just putting these things out in your annual and integrated reports or in the corridors of your offices or as a pop-up these days on your screens, but being a lot more intentional about it when it comes down to incorporating and really embedding it into your company strategy objectives, and how you do day-to-day business, i.e. your business ethos. So we leave it there for today. Tiekie Barnard, thank you very, very much. Once again, can you share that website for our listeners?
Thank you so much for this opportunity today, and thank you to your listeners. Our website is www.svai.africa. And thank you very much. I wish you all a lovely day.
Thanks very much, Tiekie. So if you'd like to feature on this podcast, or if your business has reached a choice point and you need to review your strategies, look us up at www.stratastute.co.za. And remember, lift as we rise so that together we shall thrive. We'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.